Although he wasn't born in Canada, many Canadian wrestling fans of a certain age, myself of course, consider this guy probably the most important wrestler in the American Canadian crossover. An American who wrestled in Canada who had his greatest success in Canada for a while. A lot of people wouldn't know this because he's so much on the West Coast and different parts of Michigan or Eastern U.S. But the Sheik had a lot of great success in Canada, especially Maple Leaf Wrestling, where he was undefeated almost for 150 bouts. Now, the Sheik, better known as Edward George Farhat, born Lansing, Michigan, June 7, 1926. He's called the original Sheik to distinguish him from the Iron Sheik, who debuted in 72. In wrestling, Farhat is certified as one of the originators of the hardcore style. In addition to his in-ring career, he was also a promoter of Big Time Wrestling, which promoted shows at the Cabo Hall in Detroit until the 80s, and was the booker for Frank Tunney's shows at MLG in Toronto from 71 to 77. Now, Farhat, of course, is the uncle of Extreme Championship Wrestling alumnus Sabu, a three-time world champion in NWA and ECW. He also trained Sabu. They've done matches together, especially an infamous, burning ring match, which almost killed them, both of them during it. Now, he was born to a Lebanese family in Lansing, Michigan. He was one of 11 children. Unlike most of his older brothers, Edward did not attend college, though some sources erroneously report that he did. The confusion is likely a result of a similarly named older brother Edmund having attended college. Now, he was basically Edward. Edward quit school in the 8th grade and worked odd jobs during the Great Depression. Now, during World War II, he falsified his records in an unsuccessful attempt to join the U.S. Army, likely using his older brother Edmund's birth certificate. Edward would eventually be drafted in 44, serving during the war. He was honorably discharged in 46 after 18 months of service. Now, despite portraying an Arab Muslim in pro wrestling, he was a Maronite Catholic. And you're probably wondering what a Maronite Catholic is. And this is a Syriac Christian ethno-religious group native to the eastern Mediterranean and Levant region of West Asia, whose members traditionally belong to a Maronite church, with the largest concentration long residing near Mount Lebanon in modern Lebanon. The Maronite Church is an Eastern Catholic Soyist particular church in full communion with the Pope and the rest of the Catholic Church. Now what he called Syriac Christians. Now, after completing his service in the U.S. Army, he competed in his first pro wrestling match in January 47, wrestling as the clean-cut babyface Eddie Farhat. Within a few years of his debut, he would develop his Sheik gimmick, under which he would gain international fame. He first started wrestling as the Sheik of Arabi in the Chicago area, with the gimmick initially being that of a privileged son of a wealthy aristocratic Middle Eastern family. As the Sheik of Arabi, he formed a tag team with Gypsy Joe, with the duo capturing the NWA Midwestern Tag Team title in 54, before eventually moving to Texas. During this period, the Sheik received the biggest match of his career up to that point, when he was booked to take on World Heavyweight Champion, NWA World Heavyweight Champion, the Great Lou Thesz in Chicago for the title. Thesz, regarding wrestling as a legitimate shooter, had a reputation for embarrassing gimmick wrestlers, so the Sheik left the ring during the course of the match and hid under a bus in the parking lot. The incident received much coverage in local media and helped to push the Sheik character to a more prominent level. Following the incident, the Sheik began wrestling in New York for Vincent J. McMahon at MSG, where he teamed with Dick the Bruiser and Bill Curry in feuds against Mark Lewin and Don Curtis, as well as the high-flying team of Antonio Roca and Miguel Perez. On August 18, 61, the Sheik was notably defeated by Buddy Rogers in a 203 falls match at the Cincinnati Gardens. Now, by the early 60s, the Sheik's wrestling was centered on the character of an Arab wild man from Syria. Clad with a kifah before each match, he would use stalling tactics as he would kneel on a prayer rug to perform an Islamic prayer to Allah. In real life, of course, he was a Maronite Christian. He would lock on chokeholds and refuse to break them, and use a camel clutch hold leading to submission victories. This hold would have him sit over his opponent's back as he applied a chin lock. He used hidden pencils and other foreign objects to cut open his opponent's faces. I first saw him as a 7-year-old in 1972 in a Montreal-based promotion. Let me tell you something, I was scared of a pencil for 6 months after that. Often the tactic backfired. The opponent got hold of the Sheik's pencil, leading to extensive blade scars on Farhat's forehead. Sheik's other signature legal move was the fireball that he threw in the opponent's faces, sometimes burning their faces severely. The fireball move was performed through the use of lighter fluid, which was soaked in pieces of paper, which he quickly lit with a cigarette lighter hidden in his trunks. The Sheik didn't speak on camera, apart from incomprehensible mutterings in Pseudo-Arabic. And at the start of his career, his wife Joyce played a part of his valet, Princess Salima, who would burn incense in the ring. He had 3 different male managers during his career that put promos on his behalf. His first was Abdullah Farouk, but when Farouk moved full-time to the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, Montreal's Eddie Creechman became his manager. When Creechman was unable to work with him later in his career, the Sheik was managed by Supermount Dave Drayson, his final manager. Now, in '65, the Sheik made his return to New York City, competing for the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. On September 25, '67, he wrestled former world champion Edouard Compartier to a 20-minute draw. In '68, he was brought back into WWF for title matches with Bruno Sammartino. He met 3 times at MSG. The Sheik won the first match via countout on October 28. He lost via DQ in the second match, and then lost to Sammartino in the Texas Death Match via submission on December 9th, when Bruno grabbed a pen and attacked Sheik's arm until it was bloody. Sammartino and Sheik also had a series of matches in Boston in January and February '69, including one on a sold-out event the day after a major snowstorm. Public transportation had yet to be restored in the Boston area, but the people walked to the rink in the thousands, and events still sold out. The two would later fight in 3 steel cage matches, 1 in Philly and 2 in Boston. On November 1872, the Sheik competed in his final match for the WWF, losing to Pedro Morales, then champion, by countout at Boston Garden. Now, the Sheik's biggest feud was a nearly career-long conflict with the great black wrestler Bobo Brazil, beginning in the Sheik's own big-time wrestling promotion in Detroit before expanding throughout the country. The two feuded over Sheik's version of the U.S. Championship, frequently selling out Cobo Hall. The feud was briefly covered in a wrestling mockumentary movie, I Like to Hurt People. Following their success at Cobo, the two took the feud to several markets, most notably Memphis and L.A. His other major opponent in L.A. was Freddie Blassie. Boys, they bled. Wow. There's photos out there that I even think the Canadian Blood Services wouldn't promote. Sheik and Blassie faced off several times, including cage match at the venerable Olympic Auditorium. In '67, the Sheik was wrestling a match in Texas when a fan pulled a gun and tried to shoot him 3 times. Fortunately, the gun didn't go off and the fan was arrested, and the gun later fired when people police tested at a shooting range. Now, starting in '69, the Sheik conquered Toronto, where he was undefeated in 127 matches, maybe more at MLG. He defeated the likes of Whipper Billy Watson, Lou Thez, Gene Kiniski, Bruno Sammartino, Edouard Compartier, Ernie Ladd, Chief Jay Strongbow, Tiger Jeet Singh in a big battle, Johnny Valentine, and even Andre the Giant during Andre's first extensive tour in North America in '74. It was Andre who put an end to the Sheik's Toronto winning streak in August '74 by DQ. In '76, he finally lost by pinfall to Thunderbolt Patterson, a recent inductee, WWE Hall of Fame, and Bobo Brazil. Sheik continued to headline most shows in Toronto until '77, but business dropped off significantly over the last 3 years of his tenure as headliner. In addition to wrestling in Toronto, he was the area's booker, but due to the wrestling tradition of kayfabe, few fans were aware of the fact that he was actually the booker of Frank Tunney's Toronto promotion, a position he had acquired following retirement of Whipper Billy Watson in '71. As business in Toronto dropped off with the mid-'70s recession in Canada, he began working for independent promoter Dave McKeaney elsewhere in Ontario. Now, in '72, he conquered Japan, competing for the Japan Pro Wrestling Alliance. His JWA run was successful, but the promotion was struggling financially, so when the company went tits up, he jumped to Giant Baba's All Japan Pro Wrestling. He then jumped a year later to Inoki's New Japan, but had a falling out with Inoki due to having to leave the Japanese too early, with a coup attempt in his big-time wrestling promotion. He returned to AJPW in '77, teaming with and then feuding with Abdullah the Butcher. His match with Abdullah the Butcher against Dory Funk Jr. and Terry Funk, where Terry fought off Abdullah and the Sheik with his arm in a sling, is credited for turning the foreign funks into faces in Japan. In Japan, he would also team with Baba, Ricky Steamboat, and Kateri Oki. Now, the Sheik's Japanese feud with Abdullah would later extend to the States, as well as Canada. A match between the two in Birmingham saw them brawl outside the Botwell Auditorium, where they held up traffic until the police broke it up. The match was described by observers as just classic bloody mayhem. Now, in 1980, Big Time closed, and then he wrestled for various independents throughout the States and overseas. Now, from 91 to 95, he wrestled mainly in Japan, alongside his nephew Sabu, for the very tough frontier martial arts wrestling. FMW utilized a hardcore wrestling style that the Sheik had innovated, and in FMW, he participated in various death matches. Now, in this match I just said about a while ago, on May 6, 92, and the video is out there, the Sheik wrestled in a fire death match with Sabu against Onita and Godo, where the ring ropes were replaced with flaming barbed wire. During the match, the oxygen in the ring went out, and Sheik suffered third-degree burns and went to a coma and nearly died. In 94, he had a brief run in ECW, notably teaming with Pat Tanaka to defeat Kevin Sullivan and the Tasmaniac at the night where the line was crossed. Now, on May 5th, 95, at FMW's 6th anniversary show, the Sheik defeated Damien 666 in front of 59,000 fans. This ended up being his last match. Following it, he suffered his first heart attack while attempting to board a taxi. Now, when Sabu joined WCW in 95, the Sheik accompanied him as a manager. During Sabu's match with Mr. Jail at Halloween Havoc, the Sheik's leg was broken by the wrestlers during a spot he was previously unaware of, forcing him to finally leave the wrestling business. On December 11, 98, the night before ECW FMW Super Show, Anita held a retirement ceremony for the Sheik in Corrigan Hall, during which the Sheik, in his final public appearance, officially retired from pro wrestling at the age of 72. Now, Farhat, who had health problems for a while, died of heart failure on January 18, 2003, at a hospital near his Wilmington, Michigan home, where he had been admitted early in the year. He was 76, not 78, as erroneously reported, and was in the midst of writing his autobiography. He is buried at the Mount Calvary Catholic Cemetery in Wilmington. Now, the book of his life was was finally released by ECW Press, one of the biggest sports publishing groups in Canada. He provided extensive interviews with a biographer with intent to publishing it. These interviews provide a detailed, non-kayfabe look at his career and character, which previously took great effort in concealing from the public. Farhat had previously had a reputation for living his gimmick. He didn't answer promoter phone calls for Ed, not even potential bookings, telling the promoters, "No Ed lives here." After his death, again, the book came out in 2022, and Blood and Fire won the 2022 Wrestling Observer Newsletter Best Pro Wrestling Book Award. If you can pick it up, it's quite a read. So we're going to go over his titles, and I can't even keep up, but we're going to do it. 50th State Big Time Wrestling, NWA Hawaii Champion, All Japan Pro Wrestling, World's Strongest Tag Determination League, Outstanding Performance and Exciting Award, NWA United States Heavyweight Champion in Detroit 12 times at Big Time, Buffalo Athletic Club, Tag Team Titles Midwestern and World, their version, Cauliflower Alley Club, Frontier Martial Arts. He was WWE World Martial Arts Heavyweight Champion and United States Champion, the inaugural. He was Great Lakes United States Heavyweight Title winner. International Championship Wrestling. He was United States Champion twice. International Wrestling Enterprise El Paso Tag Team Champion. International Wrestling Association Montreal Big One 3-time Champion. Japan Pro Wrestling Alliance NWA United Champion. Maple Leaf Wrestling 4-time NWA United States title. National Wrestling Alliance Hall of Fame 2010. NWA Hollywood America's Heavyweight title. Ohio Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame Class of 2022. Most Hated Wrestler of the Year Peter Y 72, and he was 368 to the top 500 wrestlers in the PWI years. Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame Museum Class of 2011. Tri-State Wrestling Alliance Detroit Champ United States. Western State Sports North American Heavyweight title Amarillo. World Class Championship Wrestling NWA Brass Knuckles title winner and Texas Heavyweight title. Worldwide Wrestling Federation World Wrestling Entertainment WWF United States Champion Hall of Fame 2007. Wrestling Observer Newsletter Wrestling Hall of Fame. BTW United States Heavyweight Champion, Midwest Heavyweight Champion, and Southern Heavyweight Championship, who has a Louisiana Mississippi version one time. So when I was first watching wrestling, I saw the Sheik and I became hooked. And the reason I love ECW, Sabu, Sabu is a tremendous individual. Sabu has been through a lot, losing Melissa Coates, his wife. I'm dedicating this to Sabu because Sabu, all the success that Sabu's had, a lot of it is his, but the spirit of the Sheik is in him. You see when he does the kick with his chair and all that. But the Sheik lived wrestling, and I consider the Sheik one of the most important wrestlers in Canadian history. We should basically put him in the Canadian Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. Maybe there's rules against it, but the Sheik is. If I had 5 cents for every person that saw him in Toronto, I'd be a millionaire because the two big draws in there, Toronto, was boxing, wrestling, and hockey. And the Sheik on a good night could outdraw the Maple Leafs. No pun intended. But the reason why it went down because again the recession in the mid '70s in Canada, what I call the Trudeau years. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's a little bit of the story of the Sheik. If you like what we're doing here with our vintage WWF podcast, because that's what was his biggest title. He was a world champion, but that U.S. belt. Every time I see a U.S. belt, I want to see that L.A. Knight might be going for the U.S. belt next 3 weeks, and I see the U.S. belt that's the Sheik's belt. You better play it because the Sheik defended that belt with anger and violence and honor, if that's even possible. But the Sheik again, he's a top 10 favorite to be of all time. I love my Bret Hart. I love my Chris Jericho, but the Sheik will always be a special. If I would never seen that match of Blassie and the Sheik from Olympic, it was shown on Montreal Wrestling. When I became a wrestling fan, I don't think so. That was literally my first pro wrestling match besides Grand Prix, and I became a Grand Prix fan because I saw the Sheik. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you're doing here with our wrestling podcast, let us know in a like, comment, subscribe, or share. Bye.